Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 91 of the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I interviewed another immigration litigator, Jay Gairson, to get his perspective and to learn about his experience in this area of law. I think you'll enjoy it. Before getting started, I wanted to remind attorneys and law student listeners that I'm having a live Q&A call to talk about immigration law and practice. It's going to be open-ended, and I'll talk about practice tips and experience, and people involved in on the call can join in too. Two specific topics that will be discussed are social media marketing for immigration law firms and the so-called 90-day rule. The call will be on Friday, May 31st at noon Pacific time and 3 p.m. Eastern. I want to keep the group small so only a few more people can join in. You can email me at info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com to RSVP. Again, that's info@immigrationlawyerstoolbox.com. Lawyers is plural. Finally, you can catch a live video recording of this interview along with the best short snippets of conversations and other material exclusive to this program on the YouTube page called Immigration Lawyers Channel. You can subscribe to it there and click on the bell icon to get notifications of new material. Without further ado, let's get it started. Welcome to the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. I am the host, Attorney John Khosravi, and I practice U.S. immigration law exclusively. For more information about the program, please visit www.immigrationlawyerspodcast.com. Please note that this recording is informational only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult with a licensed attorney for specific legal guidance that suits your case. Also, this recording is copyrighted and written permission is required for rebroadcasting. For more information about me, please visit www.jqqlaw.com. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining the Immigration Lawyers Podcast. We have a really special episode today. I've been talking a lot about federal litigation and the importance of it for an immigration practice, and I was able to connect with one of the best in the country, Jay Gairson. And is that pronounced correctly, Gairson?
Gairson, yes.
Gairson, there we go. So, Jay, thank you so much for coming on. And I'd love to just learn about your practice. But I guess to start, could you tell us a little more about yourself and where you are and how you became an immigration attorney?
Oh, how did I become an attorney? So I was a software developer dealing with black box systems and having to reverse engineer the way code developed by other people was functioning and encountering a lot of intellectual property law issues as a result of that. So people started saying, hey, you might want to just become an attorney rather than trying to do the software thing because I was more interested in the legal aspects than the code at that point. So more into the legal code as opposed to the software code. I decided, well, I didn't want to want to waste all the money possible on law school. So I actually went and became a paralegal first and caught the first downturn of the 2000s in the legal industry. So looked around for a while and finally found a job with an immigration attorney who was Pakistani, Canadian, U.S. citizen, really great guy. And I started working for him. Then after a year, he's like, go to law school. This is what you're made for. And so I did and continued working for him all the way through law school. So kind of did it almost what amounted to being an apprenticeship alongside law school. And completed law school. And about that time, the practice was actually winding down due to some disagreements among the partners. The attorney I'd worked for primarily was offered a job in the Middle East and basically came to me and said, hey, would you like to have the practice and a bonus to set up your own practice somewhere? And I was a little bit floored, but said, yes, that sounds great. And then was told, well, you need to take over the lease where we were located, and promptly said, nope, I am not paying that much per month in a lease. And so I moved the office to the literal epicenter after doing a GIS analysis of all of our clients. And
what is a GIS analysis?
Basically using GPS addresses in order to reverse engineer where the central location is. GIS is a mapping system.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. So did that and realized it was actually much closer to my home, which was
that's the best. Yeah.
And a lot closer to my home, and moved my office and have now been located where I'm at here in Seattle for 8 years with my own practice that I basically took over from someone else that had about 150 clients at the time I took it over. So now I have a lot more than that, and usually have somewhere between 300 and 400 clients at a time.
What kind of cases were you taking? Are you taking now?
So I actually started with all different types of immigration cases, including removal defense.
Mm-hmm.
I really pushed back on the number of removal defense cases I was taking. Immigration court itself is an extremely frustrating experience that basically left me wanting to yell at judges, as opposed to federal court where I felt, kind of at home and like, hey, this is the way court should be. There's rules. Yeah. Judge follows the rule too, and doesn't go
court,
it doesn't go off script trying to be the prosecutor against my client. And there was a lot more respect, so I appreciated that and stuck with federal court. My case practice as an immigration attorney has never really been your classical practice, but is I apologize for any distractions. I got people in and out of my office. Care of smoke damage because there was a unit that burnt up next to me yesterday. So exciting times. Got the little background noise here. My practice isn't your classical immigration practice, so I'm not just doing family or just business or just removal defense. My practice ended up being mostly around clients who are from countries with significant Muslim populations, which means at any one time, about 90% of my clients themselves are Muslim, although I've got plenty of clients that are Baha'i and Yazida and everything else at the same time. And my practice really deals with fraud and national security issues. And so prior to Trump, people kind of looked at me like, well, you're the paranoid attorney because you're dealing with all these national security programs, and we might encounter one of those every 2,000-3,000 clients, and it's not a big deal. And I was like, yeah, but there's a lot of these cases out there, you just don't recognize them. Now under Trump has kind of been nice because he's daylighted a lot of these programs by taking things that used to be secret and making them public, and acting like he was creating something new at the time. And suddenly everyone realizes they have, dozens of these cases, or in the case of anyone that's from a travel ban country like Iran, hundreds, if not thousands of them. And my expertise and experience is directly on point with a lot of the ongoing issues as we add on extreme vetting and other problems. So the result of that is I've been doing a lot more litigation than I had to under Obama. I'm spending a lot more time suing the federal government for taking too long due to administrative processing, as well as any other type of case delays, whether due to suspicion that someone is a terrorist or is held up due to some other type of national security or fraud concern.
You mentioned something we were talking about, how to recognize these cases where people were having issues with these kind of national security stuff, but they just thought it was regular processing. We had talked, there was some crazy stuff that exists where the government identify a case and put it in the administrative processing black hole. What kind of things do you know that are indicators of that other people wouldn't know?
I mean, the thing that everyone knows is, well, my case is taking a long time and I don't know why. And so that means either if you're with DHS, you're probably being held up under a minimum FDNS, if not under CARP. And with Department of State, you're being held by sometimes CARP or just administrative processing due to waiting for a security advisory opinion, an SAO. CARP is the Controlled Application Review, and I always get this second R wrong, reconciliation program. And it applies to anyone that might be a national security concern. DHS actually does CARP review for cases that are stuck at DOS as well as part of the security advisory opinion process, and Visa's donkey. I speak in a lot of acronyms.
You deal with the government a lot, that's what happens.
Yeah. The problem with identifying these programs is that it's not always immediately as clear and nice as it is with the travel ban. With the travel ban, I can say, hey, look, you're Iranian, you don't have any other exceptions, therefore the travel ban applies, and we know that that means extreme vetting is going to be applied, and that you'll have a public safety and national security review done under the Visas Donkey program, as well as potential other visas programs for security advisory opinions. That means your case will be delayed and negatively impacted. But that's only one part of the story. It's not really telling you what they might be finding out about you. It's not telling you what the actual cause of delays are, because if it was just a simple Visas Donkey program hit, you could, if it was an actual hit, we know it would take 6 to 12 months to deal with. But now that we're adding, 30, 40,000 people more per year into a program that was designed to handle 1,000 or 2,000 people a year, it's really dramatically delayed all the cases. So historically, the way that I would identify these cases is basically get all the inputs going into it, the outputs coming from it, and then try to reverse engineer what the central black box of the system is. So similar to what I was doing when I was a software developer. Patterns that you see for it are all over the place. Lately, I've started seeing more individuals from Pakistan who are encountering administrative processing because they've traveled elsewhere in Pakistan or have been in a hookah lounge or some other facility that has created a concern because there might be people who they could have met at that location that are participating in something that implicates national security. Also, sometimes what masjid you go to, and so where have they been attending, what imams have they taken classes from, what type of Islamic studies have they done. Then certain crazy things, like a couple of years ago, there started being additional hits for Egyptians who had had hair plugs done in Turkey because there were a couple terrorists that had that done before they went to Germany, and so all of a sudden anyone else who had it done was assumed to be a terrorist.
How do they know these facts of the hookah lounge or if they got hair plugs? Is that something during the interview they ask about?
A lot of the time it's your local intelligence.
Oh, wow.
On that, a lot of people's home countries report on it. The other problem that you end up seeing is a ton of cases, you'll have a neighbor who will report you.
Wow.
Out of jealousy, hoping that if you're in enough of a despotic regime, they might come and take away your home and your land, and then hey, there's a free chunk of land next door. I can go buy my neighbor's house cheap, or even just move on in and take it over.
Yeah.
That's actually been a lot of the product of our post 9/11 world, in that a lot of countries have been able to use that to abuse human rights, or neighbors have used it to abuse human rights, purely by labeling someone as a terrorist, where they very likely weren't or had no involvement with any type of organization like that.
So sad.
Being a convenient way to get revenge on somebody or get what you want out of them.
So how do you inherited a practice that had this and that got the wheel flowing of cases coming. How do you get cases now, especially such a unique and niche field? Do people just learn about you online at the work you do, or is it always case by case, referring somebody from an old client?
Word of mouth, or they walk in my front door. Generally word of mouth. I get dozens of people who reach out to me every day to ask me to look at or do their cases, including usually a couple attorneys saying, hey, what can you help with on it?
Yeah. You find that be a big source of other immigration lawyers?
Yeah, quite a few other immigration lawyers refer cases to me.
Interesting. Yeah, kind of going back. So there's two pieces of terminology used. One was CARP, and a CARP, was that the one where they found people that were Muslim, their citizenship case they were taking forever, and then it was kind of like a mysterious thing where they said no, it's not true, but later on they found there were some lawsuits by the ACLU. They found that doing. Was that CARP or is that another program?
Yeah, CARP is the program that ACLU Southern California finally found out its name through litigation related to naturalization cases delayed for Muslims. It doesn't only impact Muslims as a program, but the issue is that if it's a public safety concern, which is also what it'll hit, for public safety concerns, those people you can usually identify the issue and take care of it within a matter of a month or two. But when you're dealing with something that falls in the world of national security, it's a lot of it's like, well, what mosques do they go to? What hookah lounges do they go to? Who do they call? Do they send money internationally? What are they doing for their zakat? Where do they do their iftar? Where who do they know? What type of people do they talk with? Who are their business associates? Who are their family members? Are people concerned about them or not? And you add all those things together, and it becomes impossible to ever really decide if someone might be a terrorist or not.
Yeah.
How long is it going to take them to do that? And so what happens is that the agency basically becomes afraid of making a decision because they don't want to be the officer who potentially could be punished for approving someone who would later turn around and commit a terrorist act.
Yeah.
And American people have terrorism is one of the few crimes in the United States for which we have zero tolerance. American people basically have zero tolerance for any act of international terrorism. Flip side of that is school shootings. We have it apparently for it. So
Yeah. So just quick terminology, people don't know. Zakat is the tithe that, religious tithe to give. And iftar is after, when it's Ramadan right now and you do your fast and you're breaking fast and, 6 o'clock in the evening, that's iftar, where you eat and people get into groups and stuff and eat together to do that. Now, you referenced the Visa Donkey program. There's a couple of these different visa security programs that reference animals and such. I think Visa Donkey is the basic one. Just for people that are law students or new lawyers that don't know these name the terminology they use for security advisory opinions and such. Could you just do a quick basic of what that is, or just general what these things are?
yeah, so there's about 12 actual programs that we know exist, and there's probably a few more than that. Visa's Donkey is the one that we encounter the most. It's basically there's a hit or an ident check where the government's effectively doing name checks and contact and background information checks in order to see whether or not you've been involved with or associated with anyone who is involved in terrorism primarily, although it can be, again, national security concerns. Give me a second.
Yeah, no problem.
So Visa's Donkey is the security advisory opinion that's primarily used for used associated with name checks for hit and ident matches. And so what they're using is your basic biographic information in order to see if you substantially match with somebody else. The problem is that they match against both individual factors as well as your whole identity package. Since the passage of the Real ID Act, the United States has been slowly updating what it means for your identity and for how to identify somebody, and adding more and more factors. Yet when we go and we run something through Visa's Donkey, we use literally each factor in a fashion where you do them as, here's the person's first name, or here's the last name, or here's the combination, or here's all the variations of how it could sound, or here's all the variations of how it could be spelled, or match those with potentially the date of birth, or everyone that has that same date of birth, or every person who's been in that country. And so they do and-based ones where you narrow the field, but they also do ors where you end up with this huge diagram where you're looking at everything, not just the crossovers on a Venn diagram. And so when you start doing that, you have under the Visa's Donkey program before extreme vetting, they were looking for where there was actual overlap between, as I understand it, three or more factors. So if someone had overlap in multiple areas, then they would put you into the ProLine program to actually come and do a full identity check and go through what's called deconfliction, where they basically are trying to show why you are not the person they're concerned about. Now they've stripped that filter off. And now if you have any one of those single matches, go through the full deconfliction process, and that just takes forever.
Especially with millions of names that 90% of the time are the same name.
I'm sorry if your name is Muhammad Ahmed Muhammad, or Muhammad Muhammad, or Abdi Ahmed Muhammad, or Abdi Ahmed, and yeah, exactly. it doesn't, and they really have a hard time differentiating between Abdi and Abdi. The government just doesn't. She's like, that's the same name, isn't it? It's like, no, those aren't. Guy. It also doesn't help that a lot of countries have people who are very loose with their naming conventions, and
Yeah.
so nicknames are really common. But then you get the clients in your office, and they're like, "I don't have any nicknames." I'm like,
Yeah.
"But everyone calls you this other name when I see you." Well, that's not my nickname. I'm like, "Well, what is it? What's the name they call
Yeah, I have to deal with that.
Sure, fine. There's a bunch of other programs. There's Visas Horse, which applies to um, diplomatic visas, NATO members and stuff. Pegasus, which is dealing with name checks for specific countries, primarily former Russian Commonwealth states, so Kyrgyzstan, Moldova, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, all your stands. Um, then you have BEAR, which is again another foreign government officials program. You have EAGLE, which is primarily looking at your former communist or currently communist states. So you're looking at Cuba, China, Vietnam, Russia, and they do include Iran in that one. Um, and it's primarily for people seeking some type of status that's going to give them an immigrant-based benefit as opposed to a non-immigrant benefit. You have Visas Hawk, which is using the national crime databases, so INSEC and a couple others, in order to check see whether or not you have any type of criminal history in the United States. They also run a check against the CLASS database, which is the Constant Lookout and Support System, to see if you've actually applied previously for visa in order to make sure that you're not somebody who's a serial applicant. And I actually run into one of the biggest frauds I run into regularly is people who basically will attract every man or woman they can from the United States and other countries to get them marry them, and then say they have some type of injury, so romance scams. And oh, I've been injured. Look how my house has been trashed. Send me more money. And apply for the visa. And sometimes some of them will try intentionally get denied during the visa interview, just so that they can try to keep sucking money. Oh, look at poor me. And then some will actually push and try to get the visa and then be like, oh, look, I'm stuck. What happened? And once in a while they get here, and that never ends well at all. Mantis is primarily the technology alert list. It applies to Cuba, China, Iran, and Russia. And so it's where you have Iranians who are held up because they're engineers. As of the new executive order that came out yesterday, people in the mining industry in Iran are going to start getting hit by it because they are going to now be inadmissible, because those are industries that could be used for exporting materials and supporting nuclear facilities there. Then you got, Merlin, Viper, Condor, and it keeps going on. A couple of them are programs that are specifically dealing with the FBI and National Terrorism Screening Center and terrorism screening databases in order to identify whether or not you're a national security risk in that manner, not just through name hits, but through patterns of behavior as well.
Now, with regards to the executive order that came down, it was a Treasury-related order under OFAC, Office of Foreign Asset Controls, but they had a little section number 5, and they delineate immigrants and non-immigrants. They don't say immigrant visa holders, they say immigrants, which is a catch-all term that includes lawful permanent residents. I hate it. They did that in the travel ban, the first one too, and people who are green card holders got caught up at the airport. What's your opinion? Do you think it goes broad, that if you're a green card holder, you're out?
I think that they're going to delay benefits for green card holders. Yes. Are they going to try to hold them up at the airports? Quite possibly. I would advise, if you're into those industries, not to travel if you have your green card. That said, you do have a right to return as a green card holder, so they would have to actually put you through removal proceedings. And I'd absolutely recommend that anyone coming back would contact an immigration attorney who does removal defense beforehand. That's going to be in the area that they will be land here and deal with it, and say, yeah, fine, put me in detention, but I am not giving up my green card.
The worry is that CBP is just going to forcibly put on a plane and send it back to the passport holding country.
They cannot do that if you refuse to withdraw your entry, and definitely never sign an I-407, which is abandonment of your lawful permanent resident status.
It's just so crazy. I mean, it's so easy for them to delineate immigrant visa holder. That's probably what's going to end up happening, just like the travel ban. But they just keep this vague language to just mess with people just temporarily. And the mining industry, like it's it's all politics. Okay, where should we go from there? So how do you personally deal with this volume of stuff when people come and I just deal with military clients. They could be very emotional kind of, and they plead with you and they may want to call you constantly, ask you what's going on with their case. How do you handle that? Do you have kind of like a go-between that maybe a staffer that talks with them on a day-to-day basis as a psychologist, or do you take these calls constantly?
I wish I had a psychologist on staff. Really, really nice. Most of my clients get so frustrated with middlemen that they just chew them up and spit them out.
Yeah.
Meaning they'll literally attack them and say that they're part of the problem. And like, oh, you must really work for the government. And it's just like, that doesn't work. So I basically have them schedule time slots for me to talk with my clients.
Mm-hmm.
I meet and talk with them one-on-one, and bill by the hour for a lot of them because there's just no other way to do it. When you start billing by the hour, it does limit those calls because they
yeah.
time to understand what you've told them,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to when you do a flat rate case, they will come back and ask you the same question 9 times rather than be satisfied with the answer because they're hoping, well, you're going to change your answer.
Yeah.
I had a client, very frustrating last year, where she kept coming in and pounding on my door and calling over and over again because couldn't I really just please expedite her spousal visa? She's one. Can she just expedite? She's pregnant now, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I really wish I could, but you've got a 2-year wait. There's nothing I can
The
do.
visa bulletin is the visa bulletin. There's nothing you can do about
It is
that.
what it is. I can't expedite. She actually got it expedited. Now it's sitting at the NBC. We mutually parted ways over it because I was just like, "There's nothing I can do." She's, "Well, this notario says you can do this, this, and this," and I'm like, "You don't make that mistake with a notario. That's just a really bad idea."
Well, you said it was expedited though?
Well, they expedited the approval with USCIS.
Oh, well, yeah, but yeah, though, okay, yeah. You still have to wait. There's nothing, yeah.
She still has to wait, so she got no benefit out of it.
Yeah.
Other than wasting money and time. And
Exactly.
And the expedite, if it was even expedited, literally resulted in it being approved 1 month faster than the current average approval time. So it just, there was no benefit to her.
Yeah, the LPR spousal cases, I mean, now they're taking like, I-130s are taking like 15, 16 months to get approved. And so by the time we do get approved, it comes kind of in line with when the data filing occurs or for MVC processing, consular processing. But I mean, even immediate relative cases, marriage cases are taking 8 or 9 months for me. Everything slowed down drastically. Work permits, like I got one adjustment of status work permit after 4 months, but they're typically going towards the edge of 6 months. Yeah. It is driving people crazy. And every once in a while I'll do expedites and it works on those. But just yesterday, I have a LPR case where they naturalized. So we wanted to inform the government and to let them know it's updated. So I mailed them a copy of this naturalization certificate. Do you think the systems would talk to each other that says, okay, this is all USCIS. This you're naturalized, you should know that. So I sent the letter, and then 30 days later, I called to double check. It took 45 minutes just to get a hold of someone playing that buttons game. And now, like, I handle all my calls myself, but I've heard from other colleagues that, you can't have your paralegal call and they want to talk to the attorney only.
Oh, they always want to talk to the attorney.
Is that, yeah, and so I'm like, do 45 minutes and then just going through the person, what's your firm name, spell the case, this and that. It took an hour just to say, hey, they naturalized, that's it. And like, I've had it where I'm on the phone, I have my speakers on, I'm doing other work. And then I'm so caught in my other work, by the time the officer comes on the line, I'm like not paying attention. He says, hello, hello, and then hangs up on me. And I'm like, oh no. So it's hard to do other work to do in the meantime. You kind of have to focus on that and it's just crazy. It's just crazy to that this is the system that exists. Now the officers have gotten kind of nicer, but
yeah, and talking to the officers usually ends up being completely useless anymore.
Yeah. I had another case.
Customer service center is just pointless anymore.
Yeah, I had an IA-24 that I kept following up with, see what's going on. I talked to 4 different supervisors, and they kept saying, "Oh, we'll fix it. Don't worry. We'll fix it. Don't worry." After like hours, Eventually, the fifth time, they escalated some other person, some other place somewhere else. And the guy's like, this isn't even in the system. I'm not sure what's going on or why they told you that. After like 5 hours, or let's say 3.5 hours of calling. And sure enough, after a week of talking to him, everything got the approval letter in the mail. I'm like, do I really need to call you and spend 3-4 hours on the phone with you to get this going for an I-824? It's like so stupid. I-824 is transferring the case from USCIS to consular processing.
I mean, one of the most egregious cases like that I ever had is I had a Oromo guy from Ethiopia who had applied for naturalization in 1997 under INS, and it was still pending.
Oh, shit.
By the time he came to me in 2014, and so I put in my G28, think nothing of it, and I sent him follow-up, and I called National Customs Service Center a couple of weeks later because I'm trying to figure out where the case is and everything else. It's like, we don't have a record of your G28.
Oh, no.
I'm like, okay, well, where should I send? Well, we can't tell you. So I finally get him into my office, and he asks, and oh no, it's at the California Service Center. Okay, mail another G28. We mailed in G28s a good 9-10 times, and they kept going, nope, nope, nope. So we started. We sent. I finally got to the point where I was like, fine, we will literally send a G28 to every office in the United States of USCIS, and so we did. And they came back and they said, well, we can't find you on the case. Maybe you didn't put it on blue paper. And at that point, they wasn't even requiring it on blue paper.
Yeah.
So I printed it on blue cardstock and sent a full ream to each service center, as well as 10 copies that were physically signed. My client was going to kill me for making him sign that over and over again, to literally every field office nationwide, and said, somebody has this case. Where is it? Put me on it, because otherwise we're suing. But I couldn't even really sue because I couldn't figure out what was going on. I didn't want to sue over something that, could just result in a denial and immediately. And what it was is he was inadmissible to terrorism-related inadmissibility grounds for a Tier 3 organization, which is meaning an unlisted terrorist organization, the Oromo Liberation Front. And so they were just ignoring the case. And the officer, as far as I could tell, was literally throwing away my G28s. I finally, after about 6 months of fighting them on it and getting ready to file a lawsuit, they finally acknowledged me. And then I did a FOIA request and literally got back, thousands of pages of G28s. I'm sure that didn't help things at all. But the case went through. So I'll take that as a win.
Yeah, it's like you have to get super frustrated just to get something that should be basic down the way. Now, with regards to federal litigation, one of the reasons it makes it difficult to practice and get involved is the amount of civil procedure that's involved and specific, court requirements of how these things happen. Do you still have issues with civil procedure or a preparation material, or is it one of those things you did a couple times and it gets repetitive?
Local rules trip me up more than anything else, because when I file in a court in a different district, even if I'm doing it through other counsel, between myself and the other counsel, I would say at least half the time we go and file it and then get a note from the clerk of the court saying, you didn't file this correctly on PACER. You're supposed to, in this circuit, do these things.
Yeah.
There's a couple district courts that require you to separate what you're asking for from your legal argument from the factual statement as 3 completely different documents, and it's just mind-boggling to me. Some require declarations. Their supporting declarations be followed as their own individual items. Some require them to be sub-items to the initial filing. And so those types of little procedural things trip me up. But most of it, the basic civil rules that I need to use in my day-to-day practice, they're just ingrained at this point.
Have you noticed any trend? Because the word on the street was always that, you file, when you have these BS kind of cases, you file the lawsuit and then oil comes back and says, you know what, this is stupid. We'll just, fix it. Is that changing? Is that becoming less, or was that even the case in the first place? Or how much is it going to more towards trial, that kind of stuff?
Before, it was about 99% of cases just done. If they fought it, the most they might do is ask you for another 6 months. And then the 1% that they fought, those were really hard cases. They were cases like, you're like, oh no, this isn't pretty at all.
Hmm.
Now, I would say it's between 90 and 95% of the cases are just done.
Hmm.
Um, with admin processing cases, it's a bit of a roll of the dice sometimes. I'd say about 85% get approved, but the other 15% you're looking at a denial, a refusal of the visa, and increasingly they'll get refusals on terrorism and miscibility grounds because they're like, "Oh, that takes care of it. We're done. We don't have to talk to you at all."
Yeah.
Which there's more and more litigation on that one, trying to challenge Kerry v. Dan, but it's a hard haul to happen. You have to really distinguish from the facts under Kerry v. Dan. The main thing is you better hope that your client who's been labeled as a terrorist has previously been in the United States, because that increases the burden on the government. It is not at all a completely reliable process anymore. That said, I've also seen an increase of retaliatory judgments, so there's more cases where they do deny them. I still go back to my fundamental rule, though, is that it's up to the client. Do they want to live with indecisiveness and indecision that results in years, if not decades, of not knowing what to do with their lives,
Yeah.
really hoping for coming to the United States? Or is it more important that they get a decision? For me, at the end of the day, getting the decision is a win,
Yeah.
because at least we now know. And once you have a decision, we can go and say, do we need the second win? Do we want to push to try to get an approval of the visa? Or are you like, okay, I feel happy, I'm done with this? Um, that's a very personal call. I know some attorneys like, well, it's never a win unless they actually get the visa issued or get the status they're applying for. For a lot of my clients, they just want that uncertainty of waiting for everything to be gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I have cases where a person's Iranian consular processing, and they're 23. They want to make a decision whether to pursue higher education, stay in Iran, or sometimes they got to stay single so the I-130 doesn't get denied. And they're
Yeah.
like, have a relationship. The girlfriend or fiance is like getting frustrated with it. They're like, well, my family's telling me we got to get married. And he's like, no, we can't. I have an I-130. It's pending and pending. And sometimes, you just got to, bite the bullet. And it's a very personal decision.
Live your life. Live your life.
Yeah.
Don't. I don't. I'm privileged of being born and raised in the United States, and with the way we treat immigrants these days, I truly question why people see us as some type of beacon of wanting to be here instead of trying to go to Canada or Europe or somewhere.
Yeah, I find myself telling my clients, just go to Canada if you can. If you got this investor money or you got these, degrees that work, why go through this disrespect and just hassle? And both of us have a monetary incentive to say the opposite. But if it was
Absolutely. I
me,
have
yeah.
every reason in the world saying, let's keep suing, let's do more. And let's
They,
fight the case and do
yeah.
it. I don't want to take someone's money if it's not going to get them a benefit.
Yeah, it's like, why? It's just your life being torn away, and it's very personal and offensive and heartbreaking for them. So it's like, is it worth it to come to the U.S.? At this point, so I have clients right now. I have an L1 where they're just going crazy, and the clients are like, you know what? We're just going to hold off on our massive investment until the next administration, next president comes. And it's not even necessarily a Trump thing. It's just really USCIS being difficult L1s. It's gotten worse, but it's like hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. Yeah, I'm a solo practice, like, of just on the waiting lines to come invest in the U.S. and create U.S. jobs. It's like the Buy American garbage that they're putting out there to deny these cases is stopping investors from coming here to create American jobs, American products. Paradox is crazy.
And Buy American is creating completely stupid notices. So it's just absolutely ludicrous.
It's
And there's
mind-boggling. Yeah.
nothing in the regs that support that position at all. It's completely unlawful.
No, these employment cases, they're just making things up. I constantly see, I just yell at them and be like, where are you coming up with this? I mean, what? This doesn't make any sense. Constantly making things up. And I see the AO decisions too, like, even for them, and they're pretty strict in making up their own stuff. They'll come back and say, like, yeah, I see more and more sustained cases are being sent back to the director they're like, where'd you come up with this? This doesn't make any sense. You didn't review the documents.
Well, the AAO cases, quite frankly, it is often discretionary to even go to the AAO, and more often than not, it's worth it just to go straight to litigation.
Yeah. I have a case, and I didn't sell the litigation aspect hard enough, I think, and my client was kind of afraid to file with them. So we did AEO. AEO came back and said, yeah, USCIS just disregarding all the evidence, but we'll send it back to the review. And we just got the notice of intent to deny on Friday, and it's just like pretty much one page, just saying we don't think it's enough. That's pretty much it. And then like, well, where's preponderance of evidence? Where's more specific stuff? We just don't think it's enough. And the client emailed me this morning. So I'm like, they only give us 30 days. So the AO sends it back to them. They wait 7 months. And then once they send a letter, 30 days for us to get everything together. And by the time the mail delivers it, 6 of those days are gone already. And I got to get all this documentation just to try to prove something that's like already proven multiple times. And so I don't know. The lawsuit's way to go. Client doesn't want to do that. I kind of want to respond really with negative like language, but I'm like, at the same time, what's the point? Will that make a difference? I don't know.
The main thing for clients is that doing a lawsuit is at the end of the day, faster and more reliable and more likely to get a decision that you can truly challenge and figure out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's often worth it to do the litigation.
Yeah.
That said, there are plenty of reasons not to do so, and we can deal with those when it is appropriate.
But it seems more and more like the option is do litigation, whether not to is like the secondary thoughts. Okay, we're going to do it, but what reasons will we have not to do it? It seems you just got to take everything into these courts. And the president has been a record at signing judges, and we'll see how they're going to be interpreting these cases in the coming days and years.
It's not any better that we're seeing a distinct increase even with like our family law cases, where more and more family law cases are coming in and getting just completely stupid things. I got one case where they said, well, because you don't have a lease or mortgage together, that means you must not have a real relationship. Never mind.
I've been hearing about that. Yeah, I'm hearing stuff like
6 children together. I'm like, they have 6 kids. They can that through DNA already. We've got all this other evidence and tons of photos and everything else. It just happens to be that they live in their parents' house, which among my Iranian clients is entirely common to live in a big family compound.
Yeah.
And so it's just like, wait, this is nonsense.
Like I have a case in San Francisco where the U.S. citizen's wife was in rent control. The husband, foreigner, moved in. And I'm like, add yourself to the lease. So I went to his landlord, and landlord's like, I'm surprised the landlord said this. He said, we're rent controlled. If I add you to the lease, it's going to be a new lease, and your rent's going to jump up. So it's going to cost you a bunch of money. Don't do that. And they came back to me. I'm like, well, don't do it. I mean, I don't want you spending, $200, $300, $400, $500 extra a month just for bona fides when it's obvious you're a real couple. We're yet to get the interview for that. And normally I don't always, I haven't had problems with the lease issue, but I've been hearing on listservs people have that issue, and people with children too, which it's just nuts. But you just got to up the bona fides and stuff. Now, with regards
but even upping the bona fides doesn't necessarily work, nor does it make sense, because if you're already meeting the standard of proof, which in most of these cases are preponderance of evidence, more likely not, more than 50%. If you're already meeting that standard, then upping the evidence is not benefiting anybody, nor benefiting the system, because all it's doing is making them have the expectation that people should submit more, and making the norm of what a preponderance of the evidence is higher. And so actually fighting back and pushing back against that more often is a good thing to do. That said, I sell a lot of my cases where we submit clear and convincing level of evidence just because it's what's available, and it will make that individual's case simpler.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I have that issue where it's like in the aggregate, in the long term, it's not good sending all this information because it does create an expectation. But on a one-on-one basis, I have a responsibility to clients of sending whatever I can to get it done smoothly. So, and that is, it hits me. And I know like some practitioners are really bending against like giving too much. But I'm like on an individual level, I got to do what I can. Sometimes, more and more nowadays where I've just done so many, I'm more comfortable with what I can pull off, that I'll hold it back and maybe bring it to the interview if needed, because I'm like, it's too much. Or like, sometimes I'll do letters for family and friends, although the value of the affidavits from people, I think is probably I tell them it's 0.01% help. Now, if 0.01 is that's a little bit, I'll do it. And I usually have them ready, but not always submitting. But it's kind of annoying for the clients because they have to get people sign stuff and stuff. I don't make it mandatory, but that's the, one of those big problems that we have as practitioners behind the scenes of what's the best way to not to overdo it or underdo it and have that perfect level. And it kind of is field office based and the luck of the draw, which officer gets it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoy talking with you because you got so much knowledge in this area and we could go on forever. We'll probably set up another time to keep doing this and catch up with the kind of stuff you're doing.
Happy to talk more when I have time.
It'll probably be another.
That's the hit and miss part these days.
Like, no, I hear you. So
which 6 projects am I supposed to be doing right now?
So you're ramping up. I guess we'll end this, but you're ramping up what you're doing. If you hired somebody, would it be somebody that's also in Seattle, or could someone be out at some other state and so maybe out some other circuit, so you have a lawyer in another circuit?
Preferably in Seattle because of the skill base that I have to try to train somebody on.
Mm-hmm.
I have been doing in other circuits. I usually just create relationships for litigation purposes.
I see. Okay. Well, I really want to use your services to create some CLEs and stuff like that to do training in this area because this is the next phase of immigration law as being a federal practitioner. And it seems like it has to be something that's in your toolbox. So people got to get more and more comfortable doing it. Myself, I've been talking about learning and doing it, and I'm still hesitant to do it because I don't feel like learning a whole new thing. But there are those who are into it or even are doing it, but they can do it much better. And so having someone with your skill and someone to talk to as a,
there are far better litigators out there than me, but
well, your expertise in immigration, that combo, because so many people in federal court, they might be good federal litigators, but they haven't done as much immigration specific and just seen the different issues. But between you and a couple of other people that are in their field that are really standing out, getting all together and creating a group would be excellent. So if people wanted to, follow you, get to know more about your work or contact you, what's the best way to do that?
Go to my website, Gairson.com, Gairson.com, and send me an email.
Awesome. Well, Jay, thank you so much for coming on board, and it was a pleasure speaking with you. Hope to talk soon.
All right, have a good day. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.